Akira Toriyama Sensei is no longer with us, but his legacy continues, and he's indeed among the greatest fiction authors to walk this planet. You could argue that he's had just as much of an impact as Walt Disney or Stan Lee. But did you know that Toriyama was actually planning on quitting manga back in 1978? 6 years before Dragon Ball began serialization, he was going to quit. It was back when his first published work appeared in Weekly Shonen Jump. I'm talking about his debut manga, Wonder Island. It came dead last in the reader's survey. Toriyama Sensei was understandably discouraged, and he had planned on quitting manga after getting paid for Wonder Island. However, he did end up creating a sequel to Wonder Island a few months later, but it also flopped. This just didn't sit right with him. He became stubborn and persistent. For the next year, he created about 500 pages worth of manga, and although most of them were complete failures, he continued to produce more. He thought he quit, but his own stubbornness kept him from quitting. And today, millions of people from all walks of life are thankful that this legend didn't quit, and serves as a reminder for us to never give up. As a tribute to him, here's 10 saddest Dragon Ball facts that are sentimental enough to make even Vegeta, of all people, shed tears. Throughout Dragon Ball Z, and beyond, there have been so many characters who have sacrificed their lives to save Earth, but did you know that only one of them ever succeeded? Yes, be it Master Roshi sacrificing himself to use Mafuba on King Piccolo, or Chiotsu using self-destruction on Nappa, or Android 16 using self-destruction on Cell, or Goku teleporting Cell to King Kai's planet, or Vegeta's final explosion on Majin Buu. All of them failed to take out the villain, but there was that one time when the sacrifice actually worked. Come on guys, you know what we're talking about? The only time that a sacrifice actually worked was when Goku helped Raditz in place while Piccolo killed them both with his special beam cannon. Unfortunately, this also means that every other sacrifice was in vain. Next up, at number 2, how many of you remember the first person to have ever been killed by Goku? It was Grandpa Gohan. It became obvious in Chapter 19 of Dragon Ball, but it wasn't until the Saiyan Saga that Goku himself learned the truth. For the longest time, he thought that Grandpa was killed by a random monster. Even when he met him at fortune teller Baba's place, Grandpa Gohan didn't burden Goku with the truth. However, during Goku's battle with Vegeta, as the latter transforms into the Great Ape, Goku finally makes the connection. Yes, Grandpa Gohan was killed by a monster. That much is true. But as Goku finally realizes, the monster was himself. Grandpa Gohan was literally the person who raised him. Imagine what Gohan must feel if he accidentally ended up killing Piccolo. That is what it must have been like for Goku. Moving on, we all know that Goku's best friend is Krillin, right? Of course, it goes both ways. But the sad thing is how Krillin never had Goku as his best man at his wedding. Krillin and Android 18 got married 3 years after Goku's sacrifice. But then, this one isn't nearly as sad as the next one. Both Krillin and Goku are each other's best friends, but they are also best friends with Bulma. We already talked about how Goku accidentally killed Grandpa Gohan, and what it must have been like for him. Now imagine if someone killed Bulma while looking exactly like Goku. As we saw in the Future Trunks saga, Goku Black killed Bulma with a point-blank rage ki blast to her face. The last thing she saw before she died was quite literally her best friend's face. Talk about a twisted turn of events. And what about Chi-Chi and Goten? Goku hasn't killed many characters in the entire story, but he was the one who killed his grandpa. Someone took his body and then killed future Bulma, but the last and the worst one is definitely how Goku Black killed Chi-Chi and Goten in cold blood. This one was completely unexpected. One moment, Goku, Goten, and Chi-Chi are working in the fields like a traditional, wholesome farmer family, and the next thing you see is that Black steals Goku's body and kills both Chi-Chi and Goten before they even had the time to process what was going on. This was simply devastating. If you thought these were sad, wait till the last fact, where I actually teared up as I was writing about it. Next, the entire Future Trunks saga is a compilation of despair. Just look at the ending. So much happens, and the Saiyans give everything, but ultimately everything gets erased by Zeno. Future Trunks is unable to save his timeline. Everyone and everything except Mai is gone. Future Trunks is truly the most tragic character in Dragon Ball. All his life, he has seen nothing but death and despair. And ultimately, even that is gone because everything is simply erased from existence. It's like he tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it didn't even matter. We can only hope that he got married to Mai and lived happily ever after in the timeline which Whis and Beerus helped him creating. Though, speaking of marriage, Yamcha's whole existence is oddly tragic. And this is not just how badly he gets treated in every arc, this is more about his goal. Back in the OG Dragon Ball, when Yamcha was introduced, his goal was to get over his fear of girls, so that he can one day get married. Unfortunately for him, Bulma ultimately gets married to a handsome prince like she planned. As for Yamcha, it's still just good old Puar and him. He has not yet had any luck in Dragon Ball Super, and as we saw in the final episode of Dragon Ball GT, Yamcha was just fixing a car in the middle of a random desert with Puar. And speaking of the final episode of GT, where are Goku Jr.'s parents? Goku Jr. is the great-great-grandson of Pan, but even though he gets a special episode all to himself, we never learned anything about his parents or grandparents. We see Vegeta Jr.'s mother in the final episode of GT, but for Goku Jr., it's just great-great-grandma Pan. There is a special episode called Dragon Ball GT, A Hero's Legacy, where we see Pan raising and training Goku Jr., and this makes you wonder what may have happened to Goku Jr.'s parents. To begin with, why aren't there any more Saiyans? Goten, Trunks, and Bulla must have had kids too. What happened to them? It's worth noting that Goku Jr.'s childhood parallels Goku's childhood. He was raised by Grandpa Gohan, while Goku Jr. is raised by great-great-grandma Pan. Moving on, we have a little fact about Android 16. There is probably not a single Dragon Ball fan who dislikes Android 16. You'd have to be crazy to hate this peaceful, pacifist android. But it does make you wonder though, why was Android 16 so different? We know that Android 16 was based on Dr. Gero's dead son. And the reason 16 was so peaceful is because Dr. Gero wanted to make sure he avoids getting into needless fights. Yes, Dr. Gero still wanted him to kill Goku, but even so, he wasn't completely blinded by revenge. And did you know other androids may have also been based on actual people from Dr. Gero's life? For example, we already know that Android 21 is based on his wife. So what if 17, 18, and 19 were based on other people that he once knew? This sounds even worse when you realize that 17 and 18 were just actual human twins before they were turned into mechanical humans. Alright guys, we're down to the final sad fact. The latest Dragon Ball Super chapter, the one titled A Legacy Towards the Future. The chapter was released 3 weeks after Toriyama Sensei's death, and it is surprisingly conclusive. Almost as if Torotaru changed his plans to make a statement. In the chapter, Goku acknowledges that even if he is gone, Gohan can protect the Earth just fine. There is a battle royale with Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Broly, Trunks, and Goten. And the chapter ends with a wholesome scene where Pan and Goku share a smile and then try to race back home by flying. Gohan follows them, while Piccolo waves goodbye to Pan's teacher before following along as well. It's a beautiful chapter and carries a deeper emotional meaning. As much as it is about the conclusion of the superhero saga, it is also a symbolic passing of the torch from Toriyama Sensei to Torotaru, not to mention the current and future generations of manga artists who are going to be inspired by his life's work. Plus, Toriyama Sensei's son, Sasuke Toriyama, has been actively involved in the Dragon Ball franchise since the superhero movie. Yes, that's right. This one is not as sad in the gloomy sense. It is sad in the sentimental way. As a successor, Torotaru shall continue Dragon Ball. An everlasting piece of media has been made. Thank you, Toriyama Sensei. Thank you for Dragon Ball.